Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today I have on Christa, and she is here to share a story with us too.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit about my story because my mission in life is to inspire and offer hope to other people. So really, my story starts back when I was about 8 years old and we were camping. And like any other kids, you're sitting by the fire and the adults are talking and probably having a drink or two. And all of a sudden, all I hear was, "No, Christa, she was a mistake." Now, the conversation really was about how me and my brother are only like just less than a year apart. But my mom was breastfeeding. And back then, it was, known that if you were breastfeeding, you couldn't have kids. But surprise, I was there. So everyone was asking my mom, like, how come your kids are so close, together? At the same time, as a kid, what did you hear? I'm a mistake. So if I'm a mistake, that means I have to fix everything. I have to be perfect. So from that moment on, I turned into someone who would people please. I was the good girl. I thought if I did everything right and I looked for outside validation, then everything would be right. So I, went to school, got good grades, went to good, university, ended up with a fantastic job. I'm a nutritionist by trade. So at one of our local hospitals, everything seemed to be going exactly, basically how I wanted it. And was getting the validation. And one day, actually, it was the first day of spring. And we're in Windsor, Canada, for those who don't know. And usually by spring, we shouldn't be getting any more snow. But it was the first day of spring. And instead of having flowers, we were having snow blowers going out because we ended up with this huge snowstorm. And as I was leaving, I said to the rest of the team, be careful driving because the snowstorm is out. Little did I know that as I was driving home, I was going to hit a sheet of ice. And I still remember to this day going and sliding through the ice and looking at these lights. And the lights were getting bigger and brighter. And all of a sudden, I just hung on and felt bam. And it was a full-size pickup truck coming at me 100 kilometers an hour. And my car was pretty well smashed up. They took me out from the back seat. And at that moment, I thought, why am I still here? Because a few years before that, me and my best friend were in a fight and she went to a party and I didn't. My last words to her were something like, "I hate you," like teenagers may say. She got in the car and she got in a car accident and she passed away. She didn't make it. So I thought, why me? Why am I still here? But she's not. So at that moment, I thought, I still have to do everything right. I was married at the time. I had a little boy at the time. And I was trying my best to, continue to heal and to make the dinners and to do everything. And then 1 year, 1 day, and 1 month later, if you're into numbers, 111, my husband got sick. And literally on that day, I held him as he laid on the stretcher and he took his last breath. You see, we only knew for about 2 weeks he had a fast-acting cancer, leukemia. No symptoms, signs or symptoms until he started seizuring. So I signed up to be a wife and a mother. I didn't sign up to be a widow and a single mom. From a young age, just all I wanted was a family, to have this family. And I thought if I did everything right, I could finally have that family. And I did. And then when I was taken away, I thought, am I being punished? What is wrong with me? Why can't I do enough? But the people pleaser still came out of me. And then I wanted to do everything perfect. I wanted to be the perfect 2 parents for my son. And all I was focusing on was how to make his life the best possible life that I could. And at the time, people would say, you have to move on or get married. And I said, I'll never get married. Absolutely no, never have kids, but never say never. I'll already tell you the story. 7 years later, I did meet my best friend and I have 2 more girls. We got married and have 2 more girls. So yeah, it's kind of my love story, and where I kind of went from a place of pain to a place of trying to find my passion and where I belong in this world. And then over the years, weird things started happening. Like I would start getting hives for no reason, but I would push through it because, I still had to go to work. I don't think I ever took a sick day. And I would have these really bad headaches. And I remember one time having a hard time breathing. And it was so crazy that I would go into the director of nursing office, get some oxygen, and then go back to work. I mean, who does that? But for me, it was all about the work ethic, and I had to be this person. It wasn't until because I didn't stop, I swear, God, the divine source, whatever you want to call it, made me stop. And I ended up having massive seizures to the point I was in the ICU 3 times. I was intubated. I was at a different hospital a few hours away from here. And at that time, they didn't even know if I had brain activity. So I had these wires stuck in my head to see if there was brain activity, and all they were seeing is lots of seizures. I couldn't talk and I couldn't walk. And I remember feeling I'm such a burden because I could hear everything. And that's something I also want to bring up. Wherever you are, if you think someone is either in a coma or the last thing that goes when someone passes away is their hearing. So always know that when you're with someone, you can always say your last words. Just a little kind of, something I really wanted, a message I wanted to give out there. So over the years, they had one neurologist. I call him my earth angel. He looked at me and he looked at my family and said, "Has anyone tested her for a rare disease?" And everyone said no. So one blood work sent to the Center of Rare Diseases showed I have a 1 in a million chance of having a rare disease, but I guess someone has to be that 1 in a million. So it turns out I have, it's called anti-GAD65 and stiff person syndrome. And what the heck is that? It doesn't really matter because I didn't know, but I had something to start with. I had a name. And then that started me on a road to intensive treatments. It was called IVIG, very, very painful, once a month treatment, similar to chemo, but it was like with a blood product. Then I started in the holistic world. I actually won, I don't believe in coincidences, a Reiki session. And I did it, and it basically changed my life. And that's where holistic healing, really started entering my life. And I stepped in and ended up becoming a Reiki master and did, different modalities. And as you see, I'm sitting here and I'm talking, and you saw me walk in. Having said that, there's still times that I have a difficult time walking. Hence, I brought my cane. And that's the one thing about having an invisible illness. People don't see what you go through on a daily basis. And I realized that it's okay for me to talk. And the quick funny story is I ended up writing a book because everyone kept saying you have to write a book. And it made Amazon #1 bestseller. I was completely shocked. And after that book, I was brought to New York, and I was on the Jumbotron and all the stuff that I definitely was not used to. And here I was, I had cameras in front of my face and people wanted to interview me. I was still learning how to talk. I couldn't say transition words like "and then" or something like that. So when I was doing interviews, I would have this little paper, this cheat sheet. I don't have one here. And it would have these little words. And I kept saying no to a lot of the interviews until one day I thought, if I don't become my authentic self and I don't come and share my message to give other people hope and to inspire them, who's going to? Because I would have loved to be able to see someone out there. And looking back, it's now been 7 years since that diagnosis. I was given 4 years to live. And here I am 7 years later. So something I really learned is that when you have a belief, when you really have that North Star, something greater than yourself to live for. And yes, family's important, children's important. But for me, it was, I'm here for a reason. That whole experience wasn't coincidental. It changed my life. And that's what gave me the tools and brought people into my life that I would have never thought of. And that continued my whole holistic journey. And I do both conventional medicine. I'm certified in many different things and went on to write another book. So that's a bit about my story.
Wow. What a story. You've been through so much. It's crazy the ups and downs that you went through. I guess my first question is, can you tell us again what your purpose is that you've discovered?
I realized that my purpose is to give hope and to inspire other people, because so many people are not authentic and so many people will pretend to be okay. You know, one thing I realized from talking to so many different people, they don't actually like their life. Forget loving their life. And I was at a point where I felt I was a burden. I felt I was unworthy. And once I discovered that, you know what, I have a voice. Actually, people were sending me messages saying how I helped them through different things. And that's when I realized, you know what, if I continue to spread my message, share my story, and I don't expect people to think, you know, maybe because I went through all these things, you know, they have more pain, I have more pain, it doesn't matter. It's not about what I went through. It's about identifying with the feelings of what I went through. So yeah, to give inspiration and to offer hope to other people.
And what do you think the downside is of people that aren't loving the life that they live, or aren't using their voice? What do you think happens to people that feel that way?
I think they shrink. I think they become not their authentic self. They end up like robots. You get up in the morning, brush your teeth, maybe take a shower, get dressed, maybe you go to work, take care of your kids, whatever you do, go through your day. At the end of the day, you lay your head down at the pillow and you think of all the things that happened that day, and you worry about all the things that end up happening the next day, even though the next day didn't happen yet. And it's like you end up living on automatic, pilot mode. But realistically, you have so much inside you that you have to share. We are all here for a higher reason. We don't need to know what the reason is. Right now, my reason is to have a conversation with you. Right now, my reason is to connect with your audience and connect with maybe the people who share, this show to other people, to give them inspiration and hope. Because if I can do it, then 100% other people can too.
And what does it feel like to love your life, to give it an image to those people that maybe feel like they're doing okay, but they don't know that there's maybe a new level that they can unlock?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And it's not as if I love my life every moment, but I love where I'm at in my life. Because the secret for me of finding out how to love my life was through gratitude. Because if I was never in that car accident, I would have never valued time. And if I never lost my husband, I would have never valued true love. And if I wasn't for my illness, I wouldn't have valued health. So once I really connected with gratitude, every morning I get up and I'm so grateful because I can get up, because there's so many days I couldn't. I can breathe on my own. And we take these things for granted. So those are the things that help me appreciate my life and remind me that I really have a life to live. And this is my opportunity to love my life. When I love my life, that's when I can take more action. Sometimes it means that I need to rest. And resting is being productive too. As someone who's type A and who wants to go, 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 my body's saying, no, I need to rest. And when you do that, that's really about self-love. So loving your life is not only doing what you love, it has nothing to do with being, outside of yourself. It's really finding a way to love yourself. Love yourself for what you do, the mistakes you've made, forgiving yourself for things that you think, you may have hurt someone. We're all human, right? We all make mistakes. And I think once we realize that forgiveness is really the key and gratitude is really the key, we can unlock so many things in ourselves, and there's so much potential.
What is your gratitude practice like?
I really look for different ways of being grateful. One quick little story. I was at the dog park. So I have a service dog. And this is actually when I was a little bit down. It was one of those days where I was, again, feeling a little bit like a burden. Maybe we'll say last year. And my husband said to me, let's go for a walk. And I'm like, no, no, no. He says, come on. My dog's name is Hope, by the way. So let's take Hope to the dog park. Well, because it was about Hope, I said, sure. So here we are. We went to the dog park and I'm walking around. It was kind of a dreary day. And I looked at this lady and she was beautiful. And she said, Christa. I stopped. I looked and did double take because she didn't have any hair. And I said, Jen? You see, my friend Jen, I knew she had cancer, but that was a long time ago. And she was in remission. So I had no idea that the cancer came back. So I sat there and she started talking and she said, you know what? I never wanted to come out today, but my daughter dragged me out. And I said, you know what? I never wanted to come out here either. And I held space and she saw a little bit about my journey from, how I got sick and where I was and how I'm continuing to go, because realistically, I don't know if I have tomorrow, but really does anyone. So I was sitting there and I held space for her. And she said, you know what? I don't even know if I'm going to make it for the end of the day. She made no plans, different things like that. And just sharing my story, being authentic and saying, me too. I felt that way too. So that day I got into our car. And as I was driving back, I realized that was my purpose today. You see, our purpose doesn't have to be something big. We don't have to save a life or do something grandiose. Our purpose can be just to hold space for someone, to do a kind gesture. You have no idea what you do in a day, what you say, how you say it can impact someone's life. And I think the biggest lesson I got from this was the next day. I picked up my phone and there was a text from Jen. And she said, thank you so much for being so authentic, because next month, me and my daughter are going to a spa. I'm so excited. You see, she was planning her future. And when I heard that, I realized, wow, she has a future and so do I. And that's where gratitude steps in. I was grateful to be able to go to that dog park that day. I was grateful to be able to have that conversation with her. And I was grateful for the impact it had on her and end up having on me, because it gave me a chance to get out of my comfort zone a little bit more and continue sharing my story.
Tell us about your books. You have 2 of them.
Yes.
What are they called and what are they about?
So the first one is called Skip the Pain, Experience the Pleasure. And I have to tell you my tagline is cut the crap that's holding you back so you can live the life you love. Because so many of us are holding back, and it's pretty well crap that we're holding on to, and we're not living the life we love. So in that book, I tell just a little bit about my story. I give a lot of humor, and I basically outline the steps from going from a place of sometimes not even wanting to wake up in the morning to getting to a place of liking your life, to finding what is your road to loving your life. How can you get there? So I outline that throughout my book, and I give insights throughout the book. So it's a really easy, short read. I made it a little bit bigger font because my mom told me to. And so my second book is called Shattering Truths I Wish My Younger Self Knew. If you can go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be? No, not the lotto numbers or what to invest in or anything like that. But what advice would you give your younger self? And so what I did is I thought about it, and I went through my own life, and I started off with a letter to my younger self. And I have 22 chapters and basically 22 insights and truths that I would want my younger self to know. So I shattered those old beliefs. And then what I did is, in a dream, I had this dream that I gave 111 people a chance to write what their advice would be. So I put it out there, and 111 people responded. And so at the end of the book, there's 111 pieces of advice from people literally globally, all over the world.
I love that. So that's one of the questions I tend to ask on the podcast as well, is what advice did you wish you would have had growing up? So can you give us one of those insights?
Yes, to be authentic. When I say be authentic, I want you to ask yourself, and this is something I really had to ask myself, and I ask myself a lot. If you knew that no one would judge you or no one would care, how would you show up in the world? What would you wear? Would you wear a dress? Would you wear pants? Would you wear a coat, a feather coat, fur coat, a big hat? What would you drive? Would it be a monster truck? Maybe you like a motorcycle. What kind of house would it be? Would it be in a suburb? Would you want a log cabin? What would you really want? What would you want to eat? Would you really want to eat, a certain type of food because you thought you had to? Or would you want to experiment in different ones? And looking at your life in a whole, how would you want to treat your body? Would you want to be kind and loving towards it? Or, would you want to continue to beat yourself up? And for me, I realized if I would record everything I would say to myself in a day, it was terrible. It was like, oh my goodness, people are going to think I'm a slob because I left dishes in the sink, or I forgot my friend's birthday. They're going to hate me for it. So being authentic is realizing those are all stories that I'm making up. So showing up, not worrying what other people think, not taking things personally. Because when people go around doing what they do, they're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about something that you said. They're going on with their own life. So by wasting time obsessing on what other people think or you think that they think is wasting time. So living your life authentically. For me, that meant stepping outside of a conventional role in the box thinking to thinking more holistically and more spiritually. And once I did that, I started to not only feel better, I ended up experiencing different modalities. Reiki as one of them. I'm a Reiki master. I do Akashic records, something I never even knew what they were, which is basically a cosmic library of your soul. And it was a gift that I was able to, tap into, and something that gave me some answers to some questions that I have. One of the things I love to do is tea leaf readings, and it was a modality I never even knew existed. My Mimi used to have tea with me. My parents were divorced, and she would tell me stories, and that's where I basically learned the art of tea leaf reading, except I thought I was having stories with her. So yeah, that's pretty well what I would say is be authentic. And I can sit and tell you this now, whereas before I would be afraid because what would people think? Would I be judged?
Mm-hmm. So you said you used to work as a nutritionist.
Mm-hmm.
Were you holistic back then too? Was that a new development?
That's definitely a new development. So I went to school and I, followed the plan of Canada's Food Guide and what we're taught and BMIs and everything else. And I got a job at one of our local hospitals and absolutely loved it. Ended up becoming a manager, and then I moved into long-term care and became a director of the department, nutrition department. And it wasn't till there is when I started realizing that people still are living. It doesn't matter how old you are. So I remember this one particular, and we never called them like residents. They're always like neighbors. I never say client because they're people. And they were talking to me when I was doing like an assessment with them. And they said, you know what, I really wish, that I can just have my glass of wine at dinner. I said, well, why can't you? I mean, definitely old enough. And she says, could I? I mean, I'm not going to say that everybody in long-term care can drink, but going through the proper procedures, talking to the parents, definitely talking to the doctor, looking at, the medication, we're able to make that happen, and that's when I realized we don't have to live in a box. So it's when I was no longer working there, I ended up going and taking more certifications, went back to school and took a certification in natural health and medicine. And I specialize in herbalism and looking at what can I do naturally to help heal myself. And when I do that, I start sharing some of my information with others. And something that I think I'm a little bit proud of is my neurologist in this other hospital a few hours away from here, who's been following me, who's basically looks at me every time I walk in and says, according to your blood work and where you should be and the way I see you, it doesn't match. So I was having a particularly hard time, having a lot of spasms. And so she wanted to double my medication, which I do take conventional medication. So I said, well, how about if I double my magnesium? She said, well, that's kind of more risky. And I said, let me just try it. She's like, sure. I mean, by this time, I've already kind of conquered my 4 years. So I did that and it worked. And I worked alongside with her, obviously managing it, making sure it wasn't too much. And now she's recommending magnesium to some of her patients. And I can go on and on about different honey with mouth sores that I was talking to an oncologist. They thought I had cancer at one time. So using natural products are now getting into mainstream medicine. And it makes me excited because finally, I think scientific meets holistic and we're starting to become one.
I do think it has to be a marriage of the two in order to achieve the best results.
Yeah.
What about your Reiki? You said you went to a Reiki session and it changed your life.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that too?
Yeah, I call this one of my first miracles. Again, never even heard of it, or I may have heard of it in passing, but I was really I was in the hospital as a patient, and my cousin said, would you mind if I entered you into this contest? I didn't realize I was tagged in with her. So I said, sure. Well, on my profile picture, I had a picture of a heart. So the snow actually melted in a heart. I thought it was cool. Took a picture, put it as my profile. It ended up being her business is called Heartcore Healers. So I ended up winning out of 1,000 people. And she told me it was because of seeing the heart. And again, there's no coincidence. So once I experienced that session, that night I slept and I got up the next morning and I actually felt refreshed. And the neurologist was doing rounds and came up to me and looked and said, last night was the first night you didn't have any seizure activity. And I said, the first thing I said was, can I have a copy of that? Not that anyone can read it, but, a little bit of, medical evidence, I guess. And I gave it to her. But I told him, I said, I had this thing, it's called Reiki, thinking he never heard of it. And the thing that surprised me the most, he says, you're not the first person who told me that. Mm-hmm. And that was really when I realized that, even as a doctor, a specialist, a head of neurology, he heard of it and he's seen patients get better, although sticking in his practice and his line of work, it didn't surprise him at all. So that's really when, my interest peaked and I saw myself getting better. The more and more I decided to do it. And then I started becoming certified myself and doing it on myself. Almost every day I do a mini session on myself. So yeah, it's part of my daily practice.
But you're still available to do it for others as well.
Yes. So I still help other people. I can do distant or in person. I will incorporate other types of healing as well that I found has helped me. Some of them is I'll use frequency or tuning forks. I may use really crystals or any type of modality that I feel that, the person needs, because it's really mind, body, soul, and a spiritual experience. And our bodies are meant to get in a place of peace. And I really believe our bodies can heal itself. So if I can help the body get into the state so it can heal itself, that's my mission. And that's usually what, the clients and the people I work with end up experiencing. It's been quite profound, both emotionally and physically, watching, people, succeed and change and thrive.
So you are a speaker, author, Reiki master. Is there anything else?
Yeah, so I'm actually an international speaker, everything from Romania to Austria. I'm a teacher on something called Healing Millions. And it's another platform, international platform, where I teach how to intuitively live an intentional life. So not to go through life on autopilot. So kind of, I guess, like a teacher, or, I hold sessions, as that's what I call it. I don't necessarily have students. People come to me and watch the sessions I do. And, we work together through, anything that's kind of holding them back from living their authentic life. Also do Akashic records, different, readings.
Can you go through what that is? Akashic records?
Akashic records, yes. So basically, I'm going to go old school for a moment and talk about libraries. And if not, I'll talk about computers. But if you walk into a library, and if you think about it, there's all these books. Every single book is a book from your complete lineage all the way up to now, and everything that has occurred. So you can pick up any book that you find, and in it has some story of your life, or the life that where you've come from, your DNA, great, 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 etc., grandparents, and so on and so on. And what I've done through extensive training, I've learned a set way of doing it, and I meet clients and I'm able to tap into their records. I look back at whatever message I'm given, and I open up their records with their permission. And really, I look at anything from the past. I say the first thing that comes out, I bring them all the way up to where we are now. And having said that, I'm not saying I can predict the future, because the future hasn't happened yet. But based on what's happened and based on where we are today, sometimes it gives us a little bit of insight of where we might head towards the future. And a lot of times the questions of, what should I do? Where am I going? Or I feel lost. Sometimes that's where the answers come out. And if you don't, connect with the library, think about a computer with all these files, and every file being a file about your life. We can talk about it like that.
Say I booked with you, but I didn't have a question or an intention. Would it still provide value? Could you still pull something out of it?
Absolutely. Most clients do come in more for interest and say, I heard about this. This is something I've really wanted to do. I've been really interested. I don't know what to do. I say, you don't have to do anything. And sometimes I will ask a question. Usually my question is, please allow me to give the message to whoever for their highest good. And that's where the messages come. And whatever message that I'm given, I say, and I will ask, anybody from source to God to universe to any archangel, whoever they identify with. It really doesn't matter how we word it. It matters what the messages are that they are supposed to receive. And again, the profound insights of, why am I like this? Why am I perfectionist? Where did this come from? That's usually where the answers come from, is when I kind of pull one of those books out. I usually get into a state that I will start talking, and by the end of it, I'll open my eyes and I don't even remember what I said. And the other person goes, I know exactly what you mean. And then we have a conversation, and that's usually where it sparks questions. I know this, how does this mean to me here? Or, this makes sense. What's holding me back from really wanting to do this? Because I'm afraid, and I see where that fear comes from. Something like that.
Okay. So if people like how this conversation's going, they are hearing something that piques their interest, where can they find you to talk to you or continue the conversation?
Yeah, I'm all over. If you literally Google Christa Rose, you'll find me anywhere. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. But the easiest way to find me is go to christarose.com. And how to spell my name, do not hold me to the standard, please. It's my mother spelt my name. So it's CHRISTA, Christ with an A, ROSE. So christarose.com. That's my website. And you can easily find anything on there, including my books. And you can send me a message, or you can send me a direct email, and it's messagekrista@gmail.com.
Okay, amazing. And one final thought for our audience.
Something I usually like to leave is something that I've always wanted to leave and always needed was hope. And when I say that, I use it as an acronym. You see, when I started getting better, I had to learn through acronyms everything. So I use the word hope as an acronym as hold on, pain ends. But it's not only that, it's heck over pleasing everyone. And that really shows that, you know what? It comes from me first. I have to take care of myself first. And that's where hold on, pain ends.
Thank you so much, Christa. This has been an awesome conversation. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.